I was streaming yesterday and someone asked me what they thought of the Ixwa Strike update. And they had mentioned that they'd watched Spookstons' video and how he represented that particular category quite well. And I was quite indifferent because there isn't really... there's a bit of a neutral feeling for me. The patch isn't great, it isn't fantastic, it isn't beautiful. There's nothing terribly negative to say about the patch. There's no overpowered or overcrapped vehicles. There's no potential issues that could cause a calamity. But people need to remember that there might be a patch in the future where something might be completely and utterly broken, whether that be sound or graphical issues, or whether that be vehicle-based issues, or maybe it's even something like a bug where it's showing incorrect BR. Unfortunately, for ground forces, they got the long end of the stick, and air forces got the short end of the stick. While naval players, well, we don't necessarily count them. But the patch overall seems to be pretty good. It's not negative, it's not bad, it's not great, it's not fantastic, but it's a step in the right direction. At least the premiums we saw weren't necessarily broken. In fact, they were just subpar, unless you count the Su-9 or the Su-11. The comparison between the two aircraft is night and day. Essentially, the Su-11 is basically a Kika, but more powerful in a way. It's got double the horsepower, it's quite something. And the calamity over the SK-105A2 and its introduction into the Frenchery was really a fascinating one too. Because instead of putting one vehicle in either, column, they decided, well, we'll give one to France and we'll give one to Germany at the same time. Which I guess solves some issues, but ultimately I feel that they should have been doing equivalent technology to each nation across the board initially. But alas, we've got this system of meta power creep that keeps coming up and down depending on what is added in what order. Now, needless to say that when you go back to add technology that is a few years too late, for example the F-84Fs, it does provide a bit of an issue for whether that content is actually viable. Let's not talk about 6.7 aircraft getting thrown into 7-3 matches against jets. The late war superprops versus early jets is kind of a bit of another interesting thing altogether. Unfortunately, I haven't experienced any of the LOD issues where the vehicle models look like they were reverted to the PS2 era. I haven't seen some of the sound mod glitches that have happened. Obviously, I have seen some of the US server cluster issues, for example, just increasing packet loss and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, those issues are well without Gaijins and well beyond their capability at this point in time. Unfortunately, US servers is really the only negative thing about the whole entire patch, or should I say, has been since March of last year. And player base seems to be pretty stable. In fact, a lot of people are playing on average 3 to 4 hours a day or 1 to 2 hours a day. So the advent of maybe players playing for possibly 40 minutes a day is quite interesting. Maybe people only play for a few hours a week, which the majority of people did say here according to this poll that I put up on my channel, which had 12,000 votes. And I mean, aside from the server issues, the player base has been higher than it has been, and probably the highest stable average player base since March of last year. And I will say, sound issues, particularly relating to the new sound effects and the new explosion effects and so on and so forth, are nice, but not necessarily needed. I don't know why Gaijin needs to change the sound effects for every single bloody patch, but it seems like they have to change it to make it new again every single time they update. Is that a problem? No, not necessarily, but it just means that players have to relearn all the different sound effects and things you change again, all over again. Unfortunately, I do think, personally, that those sounds are complete and utter garbage, and I'm going to need to find a sound mod eventually in order to at least, I don't know, get some decent audio quality in my ears again, because the current sounds are completely and utter garbage for the most part. Overall, it's a decent patch, but don't let that blindside you, because there is possibility that a patch in the future might necessarily not go as smoothly as this one did. Considering Hot Trash and the previous patch before that was such utter garbage, there is probably a time and place for you to be asking whether or not this patch is good. Because honestly, if you're asking that question now, and you weren't in the previous two patches of last year, that is something else to behold. Other than that, go watch Spookstons' video. He explains it better. Go watch Scottish Koala's point of view and maybe Spitflies. I don't know. I'm going to link a bunch of things somewhere, maybe. We'll see. Anyway, I'm Ash. Catch you later. Bye-bye.